Welcome. I'm pretty sure if I muted you, you can unmute, but if there's a problem, just let me know. So, hi, everybody. My name's Kath Nolan. I am in the driving seat, it seems, for the moment, until you guys take over as this course continues on. So this is Design Thinking for Business. If you think you're in the wrong place.
Thank you for calling Programs. Please hold the line. A team.
Okay, somebody's trying to work out who to mute there. So somebody there. Marianne, you're sitting in the dark. Okay, so basically what are we doing here? Well, every week I will run one of these little webinars. I'll have a short-ish PowerPoint presentation to sort of take you through some of the high-level stuff as if we were running a seminar in class. I would like it very much if while I'm talking, if you want to say something or ask a question or whatever, that you butt in. The actual logistics are quite different from a classroom in the sense that I'm actually just about to move your faces down onto my other screen so that I can look at the PowerPoint while I'm talking to you as well and sort of look somewhere near the camera. I also have to look at the group chat. So chances are I'll miss something. So wave your arms or just butt in. But it's probably better if you're muted the rest of the time because we've got a lot of us and it gets a little bit confusing. So most of you have by now participated in one of the two discussion boards that ask you to introduce yourself, for which I thank you. It's really interesting to meet you all along the way. So I'm just muting at the same time. I don't know what I'm doing there. There's somebody with the name iPhone. You've got earrings or pigtails. I'm not sure which. There you are. Lara. You've gone. Do you mind hitting mute? Yeah, that's better. There's some sort of, oh, you've muted your video as well. So I can't see you anymore, but it was just, there was some feedback coming back through you and I couldn't hit it for some reason. So many of you here. You guys will get to know each other. Some of you will get to know each other very well because sometime next week I'm going to put you into some groups. So what I would like to do is just start with my presentation, if you're happy with that. Interrupt and ask questions, just unmute yourself and ask a question as you go, and then we'll finish up with a conversation. Try and get all of this done within an hour. It is being recorded and sometime within the next 24 hours, I'll make the recording available. They do need to be processed and a little bit of editing done often, so I can't just release them straight away, but we'll see how we go. So, share screen now. Oh, actually, what am I doing here? Sorry. It's very boring watching people. I think it's that. Well, so I am hoping that you can see a PowerPoint presentation or something that says OUA MBA Semester 2 2018. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you can see that?
Yeah, all good, Kath.
Okay, cool. Just checking as we go. So,
see you later.
Before we actually do anything else, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge country. So where I stand and the land on which RMIT's building is traditionally owned by the Wurundjeri of the Kulin Nation. And wherever it is that you are, I would like you to just pay a moment of respect as well to the traditional owners of that place. I'm going to mute you again, Lara, sorry. And I would like to pay our respects to those traditional owners and those Aboriginal people who are members of this class, elders past, present and future. I know some of you are actually not on Australian soil, but I think whenever you start any really serious endeavour, it makes sense to have that moment of ceremony. And I think for many of us in Australia, marking that acknowledgement of country and having a thought about what has happened before and the way that the things that have happened before impact what happens in the future is a really nice way of doing that. I think we'll have a lot of fun along the way. I think we're really going to enjoy ourselves, and I certainly have loved teaching this subject. I've taught it a number of times now. This is the second time I've taught it 100% online. So we had what you'll learn and start to call the learning launch last semester, where we ran our first time with 100% online with students in the course. So they ironed out a lot of bugs for us. And so I'm really looking forward to working with you guys, particularly after seeing your introductions and learning so much about you and seeing how diverse you are and how you're coming from a whole lot of different angles. Speaking of angles, that's my partner is just walking in the door. So I might just go and close the door as well to, oh no, he's going to do that. Thank you. Just to reduce the noise. She says, not being able to advance her slides. Okay, so what are we doing? I want you to indulge me for a minute. I want to try and take a really high level overview of the way that I think about this course and a model perhaps for you thinking about doing your MBA. This is completely borrowed analogy from a guy called Joseph Campbell, who some of you will have heard of. There are a couple of writers in the room, so I know that you, in fact, will know more about Joseph Campbell than I do. This is a very good documentary on Netflix about him, and he came up with this idea of the hero's journey, that there is essentially one plot, and that when we think about the hero's journey and we think about our own journey through life and our journey through this course, we can use this analogy. And we start, or any hero's journey starts with an ordinary life. So, and what is a version of normal that makes sense in that particular person's story. So for Harry Potter, that was life living in a cupboard under the stairs. For Luke Skywalker, it was living on a particular planet filled with sand and riding around in these jets or whatever it is he did. It's such a long time since I've seen that first Star Wars movie, forgive me. But something happens to people in their ordinary lives. And you guys have been dealing with your ordinary lives. You've given us some idea of what you've been doing. Some of you have only studied up until now. Some of you have been involved in your family businesses. Some of you have been athletes. Some of you have been artists. Something in your ordinary life has changed though, and you've heard the call. You've made this decision to embark on in some kind of study for some kind of reason. So there's been this spark and you've heard the call. And in this particular program, doing either the certificate or ending up in the MBA, and I'm going to forget to talk about the certificate in about 5 minutes or the diploma or whatever it is, because you're all MBA students as far as I'm concerned. It's just you'll either make the decision to continue or you won't. And in our MBA at RMIT, this is the core subject and it's the starter subject. I'm loving seeing your baby cat, but I'm going to mute you because all I want to do is look at the baby instead of talk to everybody. Bye. So once we have the call, what does the hero do? The hero embarks on the journey, and that requires the gathering. Oh, sorry. That's just what I was talking about. But we have we have this the known area, and there's something that sparks from this ordinary life, this requirement or this desire to change. So what the hero does is collects their helpers and their mentors. They collect tools along the way as well. That is a beautiful self-portrait, don't you think? We've got a couple of painters in the room, so I'm also a little bit distressed with my comic drawings as I go along. But the other thing that I think is really important in this context too is the helpers that you see around the room. And the more diverse and different those helpers are, the more likely that the journey is going to achieve the things that it needs to achieve. And ultimately what the helpers do is they help our hero take the plunge from the known into the unknown. And that's what effectively you're going to be doing in this course over the next couple of weeks. Now, some of you are coming with a great deal of design experience. Some of you are coming with a great deal of business experience. What we're trying to do in this course is bring those two things together. Some of you will have no experience of either, and that too is fine. What we're really trying to do here is find a way to bring those two together so that you can use design thinking in a business context to solve business problems. One of the things I'm going to ask you to do is to take that plunge and to have a growth mindset, to really open your minds as much as you possibly can to maybe that you don't know everything already. That this is an investment that you're making, that you can learn from your colleagues. You will learn more from each other than you will learn from me, that you can learn from the texts, that you can learn from the experiences that I'm facilitating for you. But it does require taking a plunge, and it does require an element of faith, a leap of faith, a leap of trust. And then as you go into that unknown, you're going to be dealing with a whole heap of problems and pitfalls, but you will also be starting to identify a range of tools that you're going to use that are going to be helpful to you. Now, the way that this course is set up is, to my knowledge anyway, probably more intense than most of the other online courses that you're going to do in your MBA. That you will have significantly more deliverables. The course has always been taught in the past, up until last semester, as an intensive where you had to travel to Melbourne to do the intensive. And came to my attention today that the OUA website, for reasons I cannot explain, suggests that you still have to come to Melbourne for an intensive. I will write to you about that as soon as I get a minute to do so, to confirm that that's not the case. And I can also make sure that the coordinator knows about that, just in case there are any of you who are desperate to go and see. I'm waving to you too. That's Emma's iPad I'm waving to. Yeah, so if any of you do actually want to do it as an intensive, we need to get onto that very quickly because it does require changing classes. But in an intensive, you're doing activities every hour. In this class, you will be doing activities every week. So there are, and some of you are freaking out about it already, I guess, there are lots of tiny little deliverables. So there is at least 2.5% of your overall assessment due each week. And some weeks there is significantly more than that. So yeah, you're going to have to manage time, but that's what this course has been designed for. Was somebody trying to ask a question there, or? No, sorry, I just heard a little noise. So yes, you'll have some problems, but all of these tasks that you're going to be doing involve using different tools that are part of this course that you will find really useful in other subjects as well as you move forward, and in particular that you'll be able to use for your major assignment, for your group assignments. Notwithstanding all of that, at about the halfway point or a bit afterwards, I think it'll happen somewhere between weeks 6 and 10, possibly week 8, you will hit the pit of despair. You will hit the point where the dementors are flying in. You will be way too busy. You will have been coping really well, and then a kid will get sick, or you will get sick, or your grandparents will have a Ruby wedding anniversary, or there will be something that just sucks up your time in a way that you didn't expect. All of us who are parents know about this thing called the perfect week, and we know it doesn't exist. I bet there are tons of you that have on your fridge, or did at some stage, the timetable that says on Mondays so-and-so does swimming lessons, and on Tuesdays we do X, and on Wednesday nights the bins go out. And we know, the one thing we know for sure is no week ever goes absolutely to plan. There'll be a student-free day, or there'll be a change to who's driving somebody to school or something. Those things change all the time. And that's actually just the stuff of life. And around weeks 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, when you've got a group assignments due, when you're working with people that you don't know, that you've never physically been in a room with, who might be in a completely different country from you, you're having to negotiate time zones, plus you've got work in other subjects, you've got your real job and your real life, it gets tough. Acknowledge that, prepare for it. Knowing about it helps, and knowing that it's just part of the plot of every great novel can kind of amuse you along the way. But then as you move out of the pit of despair, you will find that those new tools that you've been working with will basically give you new powers. As you pull out of that pit of despair, you have new ways of looking at the world. And the unknown actually suddenly becomes the known as you work back into that space. And like all good heroes, you will basically return to your ordinary life, bringing those gifts and bearing those new powers, using the models that we'll be talking about that design thinking uses. Some of the tools, the one I've just drawn loosely here is one of my favorites. You'll come across it before too long, an importance difficulty matrix. But let's face it, this is how we know somebody's doing an MBA. They like to put something on a y-axis and something on an x-axis and hopefully have 4 boxes in between. Those of you who want a career in consulting, you know that's actually what you want to do, right? And that ultimately repeats the circle, because your new ordinary life will then incorporate all of these things. So that's kind of our agenda in some ways for the course. We are going to start where we are now. We're going to collect some helpers and mentors at this stage. We're going to actually spend the first 2 weeks just doing a high-level overview of what design thinking is. The model that we're going to use is this one that comes from the work of Liedeke and Ogilvy. Tim Ogilvy, some of you will have already heard of. He's very famous in relation to the advertising world. But Jenny Liedeke is one of the foremost thinkers in the design thinking space. This other one here, the double diamond, gets used quite a lot. I'll talk about how they're different and similar as we go along. But basically this whole course has been structured around these 4 questions. What is, what if, what wows, and what works. And so after we've gone through the introductory phase, we'll start looking at the what is phase. So that's really about understanding the context and an environment. And these are my words, not academic words. We fall in love with our problem. We get to know our problem really well, so we can really focus on solving the problem rather than finding a problem to match our solution. And many businesses, because they've already got a product or service to sell, tend to look for the problem that suits their solution. In this course, we're going to turn that around and we're going to really understand problems with a view to making sure that we find the solution that fits. The what if stage is one of my favorites. That's where we really start to, from really understanding our problem and identifying gaps and issues, then we get to do a bit of ideation. We'll do some creativity work. And so there's actually a separate topic in week 5. We just talk about creativity. But we'll do that work in order to really understand how the problem, understand the problem and then focus on coming up with as many fabulous solutions as we can. And then we now start to converge our thinking again in order to work out which of the fabulous solutions is likely to work. So we go through 2 phases of that. First, by what wows, by understanding which of the solutions are going to meet the test that you've been asked this week to start talking about: feasibility, desirability, etc. And then we work into the what works, and we'll look at some prototyping, and we'll look at a learning launch. So our pit of despair is probably our week of creativity if we use this as an agenda for the class. Well, usually would be. One of the things that fascinated me about your introductions was how many of you really opened by telling us that you're creative people and that you enjoy being creative and you enjoy problem solving, you enjoy the arts or music or visual art or whatever. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm going to try and spatter you creative types amongst those who are more comfortable with the numbers as we put some diverse groups together, because this really is a class where, to use that old language of right brain, left brain, where the balanced brain and the balanced team get the best outcomes, because we need to use our creativity, but we need to balance it with logic as well. Questions, concerns, frustrations, compliments? So, let me tell you a little bit about myself, see if I can get myself some credibility to facilitate this after that sort of messing around. I'll get the dirty secret out of the way to start off with. I am not a traditional academic. I don't have a PhD. In fact, most recently I've been calling myself a pracademic. To make it worse, if we're going to think of it as a negative, I am a lawyer. I have spent 30 years practicing law. I was admitted, or not quite 30 years, I was admitted in 1989, and I've basically worked as a lawyer pretty much ever since. I started my life teaching in the JD program about 5 years ago. I'm an entrepreneur as well. I've been involved in 2 startups that have been taken to listing. Feel free to look them up if you wish by share price mechanisms. The most recent one, Domicom, is doing appallingly, but hey, it's still alive, and there are plenty of startups who don't get anywhere near as far as that. So my startups have been in the financial services technology space. As a lawyer, I've practiced mainly probably the first half of my career in large infrastructure type transaction work on the equity side. Spent a little bit of time as an investment banker over that period as well. And then over the last 15 years or so, I've worked still very much in the equity space, but largely with technology companies with a focus on financial services technology. In particular, and software as a service, I guess. So I started teaching, quite frankly, because somebody thought I might be good at it. And I was at that stage, the pit of despair stage in the journey of an entrepreneurial venture, where I had no cash coming in and thought I really needed to do something about that. Turned out I quite like teaching, and there are many people who think I'm pretty good at it. There are probably just as many who don't think so, but I'll let you make up your own mind, and I'll try and anchor you on the right side to begin with. And I have been given what is called a test score 10 equivalency. So essentially there's been a committee of academics who've looked at my work in the real world as opposed to the academic world, and have decided that I am PhD equivalent, which means I'm allowed to teach you at a master's level. Frankly, I don't think I'm PhD equivalent at all. I think the real world is much more interesting than PhD world and research, but they think differently, and you'll get to experience in your degree lots of different kind of teachers, which I think is a fabulous opportunity for you. And I don't want to belittle researchers at all, and I certainly hope that they don't belittle the pracademics amongst us, but I kind of have this theory that if we think about universities, there's sort of the area that universities think they're for, and there's the area that industry thinks that it's for, and there's the area that students think it's for. And I'm kind of most interested in the bits that industry is interested in, both with my law students and my business students. And the other thing is I love teaching my law students, but they're very high maintenance. Have you ever met somebody who wasn't impressed with themselves just for getting into law school in the first place? But I particularly love working with the MBAs because I did my own MBA quite late in life. I only graduated from it in 2013 myself, but I love the experience of doing an MBA. And in some ways, I feel a bit sorry for those of you who just have not done other work and you're going straight into an MBA now. Not that you won't have a fabulous time and that you won't learn so much, but it's just once you've got one, it's really hard to do it again. And there is something about the experience of doing an MBA, particularly with other people who are running their own businesses or who are working through the ranks, that merger of the theory and experience is really important. So it's the experience overlaid with the theory that I hope I bring to the room. Questions, concerns? You can look at my LinkedIn profile. Feel free to ask me anything. I'd prefer if you complained about my lack of qualifications to me than to my boss, but go ahead and complain that way as well if you wish. So, a little bit of colour and movement on this slide. I spent a little time this afternoon making a video, which is not on this slide. This slide's just to amuse you as much as anything and to remind me to say. But I became aware that few people are kind of jumping ahead and looking at the activities and then getting quite confused about what the activities mean and where the textbooks are, etc. So I've made about a 10-minute video, which is a kind of show and tell about how to work through Canvas. And I've actually put it into the Canvas shell today in the area in Setting Up for Success, where there's one of the pages in that is how we'll work in this course. But I will send a link to the video around at the same time with an announcement where I send the link to the video of this recording as well. And so even if you're in here today, I would suggest that you have a quick look at that. To just, I think 10 minutes now could save you a heap of time later on. Essentially, the syllabus page is a great place to go, as is the calendar, because they will both show you where things are due. And you've got links in both the calendar and the syllabus page to the submission areas. Fabulous. But they don't have the course notes and they don't provide you with any context. So what's important to remember is it's derived from the modules page. In the modules page, you'll see that there are a number of sort of areas or modules. So these, before they're opened, as you can see on the screen now, I'm sort of scrolling down some modules. And when you click on the titles, if I ever get around to doing that, it drops down and shows the different pages. And what you'll see each week is that there will be one module, which is the course notes for the week. So that one, week 1, Introduction to Design Thinking, all of the course notes sit under that. And then there's a module that sits underneath that, which is week 1 activities. And that's just the links to all of the things that you have to do. Now, clearly, and by the way, as I notice things that are stupid, I try and fix them up for the next time around. But some of these things that clearly didn't work out. So one of the things, for example, this week's activities, oh, excuse me, this week's activities include doing a swab analysis. Sounds a bit dirty, doesn't it? It sounds like something you would do in medical school. The swab is Catherine Nolan hack of a SWOT analysis, which some of you will have heard of before. I just think that if you're thinking about how you're going to succeed in this course and in your program, that thinking about threats is really, I don't know, I don't think that's a useful prompt, but thinking about the blockers. So some of us, for example, might think about making sure that we have enough time to spend with our partner or as our children as potential blockers to us getting as much of the reading done as we would like. I feel quite comfortable saying it's a blocker. I don't want to think of my partner or my children as threats. So it's a pretty straightforward approach, but because of the way it's set out, if you just went from the syllabus or from the assessment tasks to that task, it wouldn't necessarily make any sense. But if you've read through the topic notes, then you will make sense of it all. Each week, the first of the topic notes provides an overview as well. So even now, and I'm not suggesting you do this, but you know, I have heard there are people who only do the submission stuff. They read the minimum that they can get away with. If it's not on the test, they don't do it. Don't understand it myself, but I know it happens. It turns out you're one of those. If you're only going to read one page in the topic notes, read the overview page so you get some context of how the things fit together. I'm going to talk about assessment tasks in a second. Sorry, I'm going to run out of puff otherwise. I'm going to talk about the assessment tasks in a second, but I'm experimenting with a slight change to the way that I ran the course last time, just based on some feedback. What I've done is the whole of the course is open. What I did last time is I only opened week 2 halfway through week 1, and then I opened week 3 halfway through week 2, and so on. And the reason for that was to try and keep people as much as we could synchronous week by week. However, you guys are doing this online because you're busy people and you've got other commitments, and there are going to be some of you who are going to not be available for a week or so. And so I've got the whole thing open so you can jump ahead if you need to. At the same time, if you don't need to, I would strongly recommend that you try and keep it in sync. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and there are lots of things to do. And from week 3 onwards, you'll be spending some time each week with other members of your group. And if people are at completely different stages, it makes it very difficult to have meaningful conversations. So that's based on some feedback from last semester. We weren't really able to do it last semester because frankly, some of the stuff was being built as we were rolling it out. I've also made some other changes from last semester. There was an additional task, an additional journaling task that everybody was required to do last time, but it got very confusing and it was frankly really, really difficult to mark because every week there would be prompts and then those prompts would move across. So this time what we've done is we've kind of blended those journaling tasks, and also last time it was sort of 15% for the journal and 15% for the many activities. Now it's 30% across the lot of them, and some of those activities are just formative. Last time all of the 15% were, and some of them are, you'll get a qualitative mark. It's quite a lot of work for all of us, frankly, doing it this way, but it does give us or me the opportunity to get to know you better and to give you feedback week by week. So hopefully it's manageable, but I won't pretend that this isn't going to be one of the busiest classes that you do. And I think if you keep up with this, you'll be really well placed for the rest of your degree. So assessment tasks, started talking about those. 55% of your mark will be based on your own endeavours and 45% you will share with a group. Having said that, the RMIT policies let me give people in groups different marks. One of the things that I've learnt from our learning launch last time is I only became aware of issues with groups about towards the end when it was too late. So one of the things that I'm going to build in this time around, and I'll set up an invitation, is I want to do a one-on-one with each of the groups around the week 6 and 7, just to check in with you, find out how you're going, find out how you're working together, and see how I can support you best to do that. But I'm also feeding in a little bit more group feedback so that I can become aware if there are issues. But at the end of the day, when you submit things as groups, I need to know if somebody hasn't participated. Now, what will happen in this course, because particularly early on, and any of you who've done other courses will know that up until the census date, there will be a number of people who are just trying to work out whether or not it's for them. And so we will have people drop out of the course. And that, particularly when you're doing group work and a group has already been formed, affects the groups. So there's nothing much we can do about that. We'll start with groups of 5 and some of the groups will get smaller. Last time I had one group that got as small as 2 and then we had a number of groups of 3. So people drop out, it happens. But then that we can deal with pretty easily. It's when people just go AWOL that it can be very distressing for other group members. And it can, and if I don't know about it, I can't just use one group member's say so. I need to actually have evidence of what's going on before I give people different marks. So that is one of the things that's much easier to manage and observe in a classroom than it is otherwise. Individual, like I said, 55%, 30% of that is these individual tasks that are due every week. How that works is 2.5% of your marks every week over the 12 weeks. I think it's divided by 12. I can't do the maths in my head at the moment. And so basically, just to keep it even, I've just allocated 25 marks. That should give you, so if you've got, like this week, 3 tasks, 2 of them are worth 10 marks and 1 of them was worth 5 marks, that should give you an indication too of which tasks I want you to spend more time, expect you to spend more time on, or expect will take you more time than the others. Many of the tasks in this group are formative. So if you give me evidence that you've done the thing that I've asked you to do, I'll give you feedback on it, but you'll get full marks for it. You just have to do it. You might be asked to reflect on it as well, but you just have to do it. Otherwise, you will get qualitative marks, and the qualitative marks that give both you and I a good way of me giving you feedback and you getting a sense of what is required at the postgraduate level, given that this is your first subject. Many of the tasks that you do individually will feed into the group assignment. So you'll do something one week and then you as a group will be asked to discuss or to deal with everybody's work the following week. And that's one of the ways that I keep you in line and working the same way. The other individual task is due at the end of the semester. It's basically a journal task. It gives, there's a topic question, it requires some analysis and some personal reflection. Hint, a really good thing to do each week is to just spend half an hour or so just bulleting out what surprised you, what you learned, what things you're going to plan to do differently as a consequence. So you've got some rough notes to start with when you start reading that. If we go back to our hero's journey analogy, when you rise out of the pit of despair and you return home with the gifts, that's the new normal. And it can be really hard to remember what you didn't know when you set out on the journey. And reflection asks you to do that. 45% of your mark is based on a group report. There will be, or a group task. There will be some weekly tasks. They're not every week, and all up, they amount to 10% of your overall mark. But they're things that feed into doing your group assessment. And then the group project forms around a wicked problem. This semester, the wicked problem we're going to be looking at is the introduction of autonomous vehicles into public transport. So there are 2 different ways we can look at that. The groups can decide, and you'll get a lot more information about that shortly. So I've got a dog scratching at my door now. It's insane here tonight. So the ways you can look at that problem are either looking at a solution to deal with the problems involved in transitioning to autonomous vehicles, or you might look at ways in which autonomous vehicles themselves can solve a problem in relation to public transport or public transportation. So our industry partner for that is a company called Keolis Downer, who are a very large international public transport company. They're a French company, and one of their managers or directors of strategy is spent about an hour with me. I've got an interview recording, so he'll provide all of the background and a whole lot of information that you'll get around week 3 to get you started thinking about that. So, questions, concerns, frustrations. Don't forget to unmute or wave quickly if you've got something you want to ask. You're all shy. That will stop. And then by week 12, you'll be exhausted. Carolina. Is it Carolina or Carolina?
Carolina.
Carolina. I have a friend from Colombia who's called Carolina. That's why I guessed that way. Oh, sorry. I look like I'm looking down, but that's where your face is. You have a question?
Yes. Where will the recorded webinar show up, as I missed the first half completely?
Okay. Well, what I'll do, what I'll do probably on Thursday, at worst Friday, is I will send an announcement. So, and the announcement will say this week's webinar recording, or it'll have that in the heading, and I'll put into that any of the recordings or materials. So it'll come to you as an email. What I do usually is upload them to YouTube. Because I record them in Zoom, it might be a link directly to Zoom, just depending on what's quickest and easiest. So you'll address it that way. So the dog is going to actually scratch the paint off my study door. I'm just going to quickly just back away while somebody else has a question and let him in. Sorry about that. My children are grown up and they don't bug me as much as they used to. Now my dog bugs me instead. What can you do? This is probably why they don't let you take your dog on campus, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Any other questions? Let's keep going then.
Sorry, just quickly. Hi.
Hi, Emma.
Just to clarify, did you say that the journal task is no longer something that we need to be doing?
That's right. So the journal task is basically, it's now really reflected. You're still doing those tasks, but not as a separate task. So there will be journal prompts that along the way that you'll be asked to think about that might help you with your final essay. And then some of them you'll be asked to include the journal prompt responses in what you submit in the weekly individual tasks. So if you're finding text in there that says anything about do this for your journal, I've searched high and low and tried to make sure I got rid of all of them. But if you find something and you're thinking this doesn't make sense to me, please let me know. It's, you know, the way I see it, we're in this together, and I'm not putting stupid things in there on purpose, but sometimes stupid things happen, and you know, we're still getting used to the way Canvas works and what its limitations are. If you do find something odd in a page or it doesn't make sense, often the best way is to just copy the URL of the page that you're looking at online and send me an email with that URL as well as your question, and then I can pop in and look at exactly what you're looking at and make sure that I'm answering your question properly. Because it's often, this is such a big course and there's so many things going on. If I get the wrong end of the stick, it's part of the discipline of working online with people, that's all. Any more? Keep shouting out. So I've said this is quickly, but I'm going to be allocating the groups. I know some of you are doing more than one subject. MBAs are full of group work. We call them collaborative learning networks, or CLNs. This is the first subject for many of you. You don't know each other yet. I want the groups to be diverse, so I'm just going to do it, and you'll find out who they are next week. I will do my best to make the groups as diverse as I can in terms of skill and levels of involvement. Sorry, I'm just going to mute that person again. And even so, even within that, I will try, if I can, to identify some geographic things. So if we've got, I notice we've got a cluster of people who are in Queensland, or in Brisbane. We've got lots of people who are in Melbourne. I think we've, so far I think I've only seen one in Western Australia, and I might have made that person up. They might be in another class. Now we've got you, Tracy, there in the States. We've got someone in Qatar. So I'll do what I can to make sure that I haven't got, for example, a range of time zones that makes it absolutely impossible. But you know, I can't promise. And I'll start the groups with about 5 members. We'll just see how it rounds out. Yeah, and then, yeah, basically no correspondence will be entered into after that. So oh no, that's right. We didn't start at 7, we started. Okay, so in the next few minutes, I just want to really give you a very quick overview of what design thinking is. So before I do that, from a mechanics point of view, a getting online point of view, getting through Canvas point of view, have I got any other questions? Okay.
I've got a quick question.
Great.
So pretty much anything in the announcements, there are tasks that we have to complete, and that's very much what we have to look at. There's nothing else in there that we can miss.
So you might have missed at the beginning, I was talking about how to navigate through and find out what's there. No, that's fine, Carolina, don't worry about it. What I'll do tomorrow in the announcement, it'll include a little video, which is a kind of show and tell for where to look and where to find things. And if you're really desperate to deal with that tonight because it's stressful, I didn't realise how difficult it was for people actually until I just noted I had this confluence of similar questions today. What I've done is there's a page that's in the, I think it's in the setting up for success area, and it's called How We Will Work in This Course. And I've added a video in there, which hopefully explains. But the short version is look in the modules.
Yeah, in the modules, okay.
Okay, cool. All right, so what is design thinking and how is design thinking for business? Does anybody want to actually have a hazard a guess of what design thinking is all about? No. Nobody wants to hazard a guess. Basically, you might have seen these terms in other senses as well. Design thinking is often also called human-centered design, or as banks like to talk about HCD. I've been into 2 or 3 banks and an insurance company lately that have been talking about their HCD programs, which I find kind of funny. Sorry, I'm going to mute somebody again. I've got to see who you are. I need my mute all button and I've lost it. Can't work out who it is. Oh, Simon, I think it's you. No. Anyway, somebody there is being noisy. If you're not muted, could you mute? So what I was about to say is I find it, oh no, I'm really going to have to stop that noise because it's going to drive everybody insane. Let me find you wherever you are. Sorry. This makes me, oh no, there's 2 pages of them, that's why. So many people here. Okay, Chloe, I need to mute you and somebody else who's on the phone. I've muted you if you go, oh, that's better. Ace, sorry about that. It's funny how telephone noises can make a huge difference. Yeah, anyway, what I was going to say is I just find it really interesting that you can have something that's called human-centered design and then suddenly give it an acronym that means nothing to anybody, because human-centered design kind of, we understand what it means from the name, from what it says on the tin. It's about designing around humans. And design thinking it's a form of human-centered design. Design thinking is using design type skills to solve problems by really understanding what the problem is and having deep empathy with the stakeholders that are involved. So what does that actually mean in practice? The notes go into this quite detailed and at sometimes confusing analysis of the different types of logic that are used. So design thinking uses what's known as abductive logic, which overcomes the limitations and the conventional rational or strategic thinking of deductive or inductive logic. So it sits in between rather than deducing or inducing some sort of outcome. We are using abductive logic to understand what the problem is. Again, this language just gets confusing. I think it is easier to think of design thinking as bringing both creative and critical thinking together. Creativity by itself is not design, but logic by itself is not design either. What we are trying to do is harness creativity with a view to finding the right solution to the real problem. So let me give you an example, and it's funny because I teach law, a lot of how we work out how to write contracts is by reading cases where there are disputes. So by their very nature, they're deals that have gone wrong. So we study the things that went wrong in order to understand how to do it properly. Somebody, I think John Cleese has written a book with his psychiatrist along the same lines where he argues that in order to work out what normal is, we study crazy people and we need to sort of rethink it. So this is, for my money, an example of something that design thinking is not. So this idea that introverts would really love to have these little seats with these sound pods. I don't know how many introverts are in the room. Clearly I'm not one of them, but I live with a couple of introverts. And I imagine my daughter would do anything rather, she would put up with people talking at her all the time rather than stand out the way that you would stand out wearing a noise insulating helmet like this. So yes, it's used logic to solve the problem. It's thinking introverts don't like to be seen, introverts want it to be quiet, but they haven't actually really understood what not wanting to be seen actually means. Another great example, this had a big social media blast a long time ago, and I'm still using it because I just think it's hilarious. This is not design thinking. Some designer has come up with this wonderful idea for these pens that are clearly designed for women. Well, the backlash was incredible. There was clearly no empathy for the thought behind the people who these pens were designed to be used. I particularly like this guy here and the look on his face.
Sorry, Catherine, just advising that I'm going to pull off. Unfortunately, we need to leave for the factory tour. So okay. I will catch up with the video later on. Yeah, thanks a lot.
No need. We know that you're there and it's fine. You can catch up.
No worries. Enjoy, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. A tanning bed is 100% solar powered. Kind of funny, but gets us there. I think for me, this is probably my favorite example of what design thinking is not. So I look at this and look, okay, we can see that clearly this is some sort of walking or bike track. These gates have been designed to slow things down because there's a busy road here. Fabulous. But actually, when you look at how users actually use this path, clearly there hasn't been significant design thought going into it. And in solving one problem, another problem has been created. So we at RMIT would argue that we're entering into a new age in which everyone's ability to innovate is going to matter as much as their ability to read, write, and to do basic arithmetics. Innovation means creating something new. If the dictionary definition of innovation draws on that idea of something new, usually from some existing way of doing things. I have, you can't see it from here, but I have a sign. I've got, you might notice lots of clutter around my room, but I have a little poster on the wall that reminds me about vu jardin. You've heard of déjà vu? Well, vu jardin is the phenomenon of having the feeling that a situation that used to feel very familiar is suddenly experienced in a completely different way. And that's what innovation is. It's about creatively solving a problem with a real understanding of what the problem is. It's recognizing new problems. So basically what we'll be doing in this class is giving you skills that will help you answer these questions. How we can apply technologies in new and different ways, how we can understand what our customers' most critical unmet needs are, how we can reach entirely new audiences. At the same time, we need to be able to think about these things on the bottom line here as well. You're going to need to work productively. And so part of this course, particularly as the course that's designed to be the first in an MBA program, is about helping skilling you up to work productively in group meetings. But you've also got to, design for the sake of design is wonderful, but you've also got to do it in a business context. We ultimately want to increase sales of our products or our services. And ultimately, you guys, you're investing in yourselves, and they're the kind of leaders that we all want to see, is people who are prepared to make the investment. And so that is also what we need to be doing in this context. So I'm going to finish now with this quote from Heather Fraser, who is from the Rotman School of Business. RMIT actually has a good relationship with Rotman in Toronto, and we've had a couple of their researchers in the design thinking space come and speak to us over the last couple of years. Design is not a one-shot vaccine. It's an innovation fitness program. It puts an organisation on the top of its game. It's not an event. It's a way of thinking, communicating, and doing every day. And I think some of you will already have instinctively understand the need to think about design and problem solving as not a one-off solution. Again, I'm making some assumptions about why you're investing in your own education the way you are. I noticed in the introductions, we've got a couple of people who are working in HR. And often HR people notice very quickly there's the correlation between problem solving in the broader sense and culture in organisations. Culture is not a one-stop thing. You can't just have a culture day and decide what the culture is or the vision or the mission statement and then never come back to it. It's a process. It's something that you need to address every day. And I guess I come to the legal profession always thinking that one of the reasons that some people give up on it and other people love it is it's a kind of esoteric housework. And management is similar, esoteric housework, in the sense that there's a mess and you sort it out and you come back the following day and there's another mess. That there's not, you can't just do one thing and then sit back and count your money. And the people who do that get left behind. And so design thinking is a set of tools and a process that we believe are one of the ways, or provide a tool set that will mean that you're able to do that esoteric housework and that you won't be left behind. So that's all I really wanted to do now, is to just provide... That's my son coming home, sorry. usually everybody's home and the dogs are in that other end and like they have dinner and it's all very quiet. So, but today was just crazy for some reason. So that's all I really wanted to say. I'm really looking forward to meeting you guys properly and working with you. If you've got any questions you want to share now, we've gone 2 minutes over the hour that I allocated. I'm happy to do that, but I just also want to be respectful of your time. So if anybody wants to drop away, drop away. If anybody's got a question, unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, just a quick question. Will this be...
Hi, Adam. Sorry, I'm just going to say your name so I get to know you.
That's okay. Is it being confirmed if this will be every Wednesday at this time?
I had a quick look at the appointments, what the votes were, and we'll be looking at Wednesdays at 8 p.m. was the most popular.
Okay, and typically 1 hour, is that what I should expect?
Yeah. So I will start right on time. I will aim for my content to finish within the hour. I'm happy to stay back, but I know how busy everybody is, so I want to be respectful of that time, that's all. And I know that doesn't suit everybody, but it suits the largest number of people. So that's what we'll go with. And by the way, I am more than happy to talk to you at other times. We'll make that work. Any other questions, concerns, frustrations, funny hats, robots? Anybody else got a robot on their desk? Something? Well, I'm going to stop the recording then. And, oh, yay, Jamie. It's really funny, just looking at you guys now as a screen like this. I need to stop share so you probably see the same thing, I'm not sure. But I just find it's like those, when I watched Sesame Street as a kid, it's like one of these things is not like the other. Or like the Brady Bunch, but like a really, really large family. At the beginning, everybody had a beard. So I feel like we need false beards for next time so that everybody can have a beard. That's my challenge. On that note, nothing else in the chat. I'm going to leave you to have your dinner, have your lunch, tell your loved ones how awesome your first webinar was, anything like that. So see you later, alligators.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Catch you
you.
later.
Yeah.
See ya.